right, what's up? Hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's NBA pre-lock show where we're here to break down a nice 7-gamer, fun slate. Just me today, which is always a bit of a bummer. Never like doing the solo shows as much, but I love these slates. Like last night, I'm not gonna lie, I lost. I did not have a winning slate. I was on all the right guys, but I was on too many other guys. Trying to narrow that focus in a bit more today, but when there's a lot of value, I'm never upset about that. At least when it makes sense. Even when it burns me, it can burn us on occasion, but I prefer slates like this where you're trying to figure out the right value to play instead of the slates where we're just trying to make value out of nothing. So it's gonna be a fun one. Kevin, what's up? Cujo, Chijuana, Ballaholic. They took your money last night, mine too, but we're close. We were close. The interesting thing, like Kuzma went off. There are a lot of guys that went off, but I think I just had too much exposure to some of those Miami guys, and the Chicago guys ended up sucking. So a little bit of a bummer there, but we're going to get back on it tonight. First game, we have Denver going up against the Knicks. Both of these teams played last night, but in very different ways. Denver played a pretty close game. Pretty much all of them played 30-plus minutes. Was right about Jokic playing more than 30 minutes, but he just didn't do what we really needed him to do to end up in the Nuts lineup. The Knicks blew out the team they played against last night, and so they actually didn't play as much as you would expect. With that information and the Nuggets not having a lot of new injury news, I'm not overly excited like seeing them show up in lineups. No one really stands out to me given the context of this slate. We have a lot of news from a lot of these teams. They're just missing a ton of bodies. And so even though this game has one of the higher totals, the spot just didn't make a ton of sense to me going up against the Knicks. I don't hate Jokic. Like, obviously, I played him yesterday. I just don't like this spot too much. The DS did have him showing up a little bit earlier. He's still showing up in about 7% of my lineups, and that's right at field weight exposure. So I'm comfortable enough with him, but he's just not someone I'm trying to prioritize. But hey, the DS likes him enough. I'm not going to be mad at that. Jokic showing up a little bit by himself is a good thing in my book. What's up, Thomas? Good to see you. Jamal Murray, similar kind of play. I can understand, but and he does show up in 3% of lineups. So if he does something, at least he's there. Julian Strawther showing up in 1% of lineups, but I'm not doing anything to make that happen. That's all the DS, and they're not showing up enough where I feel like I need to lower them at all at this point. I thought about when I had Jokic showing up in like 30-40% of lineups when I first started running the DS, and thankfully, with some adjustments, that's now calmed down a little bit. Like I said, the other side of this game is a little bit more interesting to me. Denver's not known for being like this elite defense or anything like that. From an injury news perspective, there's not much here, but let me double check just in case. Well, Josh Hart is out, so that is a boost to guys like Landry Shamet, Jordan Clarkson, Tyler Kolek, and then Miles McBride's been out for a little bit now, and similar boosts to those same guys. I do think we more than likely have better value than Shamet and Kolek on this slate, unless things just get really weird in this game. So I'm not looking at them too much. I'm really focusing on potentially the studs. The two guys who stood out to me the most were Karl Anthony Towns and OG Anunoby. With Josh Hart out, we should see a boost from OG. The main reason I don't have a min on him, and I am still trying to figure out if I think it could be worth maybe like a 5 or 10% min, but ultimately, I think we just have enough value where I don't have to get to him. There's still guys like Brunson and Cat here who dominate usage. McBride or Mikal Bridges, he's in a similar boat here. Just didn't stand out for me too much. At the end of the day, I just put a 15% min on Karl Anthony Towns. He's the guy whose upside I'm willing to buy into. It could be a Brunson night, but I'm just kind of choosing Cat here out of the group of guys. There's just other games I like a bit more, and so I'm not going too wild on the Knicks. Let's see if any of them show up by themselves. They do not. We have Cat only showing up in 8% of lineups. Wish he was a little bit closer to the min I had on him, but there's other spots I like significantly more. Jalen Brunson's showing up in 1% of lineups. So these guys are present in these runs so far, but the later games are just much, much better from a price tag range and just DFS goodness. So I'm not getting too caught up and not having exposure to some of these earlier games. Similar situation here with the Timberwolves and Raptors. Timberwolves are an elite defense. Raptors are surprisingly above average defense. So not too much is going to stand out, but this is a close spread, which keeps things a little interesting. For the Timberwolves, once again, we have pretty much all of them questionable, at least the ones that matter. Julius Randle is questionable with that thumb injury. Anthony Edwards is questionable with his little elbow thing he's working through. Ideally, both of these guys start and play, so we don't have to worry about them too much. I don't think this is a game we'll have to worry about having too much exposure to unless one of them get ruled out. And then we will have to consider the guy who does play and look at other options like Jaden McDaniels, Dante DiVincenzo. I don't love the matchup here. I would prefer to focus on the later games, like I keep saying, but it is what it is. We just have to kind of wait and see when we get that news. So keep an eye out for it. We'll get that probably while we're still live. Ideally, I'll see the notification come through, but if it doesn't, if I don't see it, just reach out, let me know. Currently, I have a 15% min on Anthony Edwards and a 10% min on Julius Randle. They're just studs who can come through if this game stays close and competitive. They're two players, especially Anthony Edwards. I usually don't pay too much attention to matchups because he's just one of those guys that can overcome a tough matchup. I care a bit more about a really good game environment. And the DS likes Anthony Edwards. You should see him show up by himself. I have a 15% min on him. Just like him showing up in the mix, but he's not one of my favorite plays on the slate. And then Julius Randle has that 10% min on him. I'm going to be over the field there, assuming he plays. And so he's showing up right around that range too, around 11%. So I like these guys, just not my favorite spot or anything like that, but it's nice to have exposure on a 7-game slate. Similar situation here again. For the Raptors, not a team I feel like you have to have exposure to on this slate. But again, this game is still one of the higher total games, should be competitive. It wouldn't shock me if one of these guys end up in the nuts lineup alongside all the other value we have. And so the Raptors are just guys I like to have some exposure to. I like having some leverage on Emmanuel quickly, 7,200, some upside there, 5% min. And then I have a 5% min on Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes. I can understand the RJ Barrett play, but given the fact I don't love this game too much, I also don't love trying to match the field on the guy who's chalky in the game I already don't like too much, especially the Raptors. So this is a team I usually try to avoid. You know what, Darius? It is hard to trust him. It's so hard to trust him. That's why I think I only have like, what, a 5% or maybe it's a 10% min. Yeah. It's hard to trust Julius. Good old. Never mind. Not going to go there. Anyway, next up, we have the Boston Celtics going up against the Houston Rockets. Lowest total on the slate, but there's enough information here and trades that have happened that keep things interesting. For Boston, we have Jaylen Brown. He's doubtful. He's not going to play tonight. Big usage rate increases to guys like Derek White. We've seen Peyton Pritchard have good games in this when this happens. Sam Hauser's also out. And so that's why you're seeing guys like Baylor Shearman start to show up. Jordan Walsh sees a boost. And then even Manat, who we haven't really talked about in what feels like ages, comes back to being semi-viable. If this was a smaller slate, I would look at these guys a bit closer, but they still shouldn't see more than 20 minutes given the guys who are still available here. So we have to also realize the Rockets are basically healthy, and this is going to be a brutal matchup, but they're priced well for a spot without Jaylen Brown. Derek White's inconsistent as all hell. Y'all know I'm frustrated with him. Never love playing him in tough matchups, but he can get hot just like anyone else. Someone's going to have to score points for the Celtics tonight without Jaylen Brown. So he's someone that definitely has that kind of upside. So I put a 30% min on him. Peyton Pritchard, also viable here. Not my favorite guy. Hasn't been in the best of form, but 30% min there. Just want to make sure he's showing up. And then Keita. Kita. I keep saying that. I've liked attacking the Rockets with bigs. And Kita's a little small, but I think this is still a soft matchup for him. And so I have a 15% min there. I like being over the field on Kita. And then I have a 10% min on Baylor Shearman. Just another value play that I like to have in the mix. The chalk of the night is really going to come from like the Thunder and Grizzlies because of all the guys they have out. And I just like mixing in other viable options. We saw it with the big from Milwaukee. Wasn't it Pete Nance, who I think is related to Larry Nance. I saw a picture of him and I was like, looks a little familiar, but could be wrong. Who knows? But forgot where I was going with that. Pete Nance. We had like a 5-10% min on him yesterday. No one played him because no one knows who the hell he is. And he went off. He was a low points per minute guy who had a really strong performance because he saw more minutes. And Baylor Shearman's kind of in a similar spot here. Should see more minutes. Matchup is still tough, but just another low-owned guy that's a little bit different from all the other value everyone else is looking at. So I like Boston more than I thought I would at the start of the slate, but still not a team I want to... Like, I don't really love having more than one or two of them in a lineup, though. All right. Other side of this game, Houston... No real injury news. Like Dorian Finney-Smith is out, but that doesn't really matter these days. Tough matchup against Boston. They still play good defense even without Jaylen Brown, but it does still impact them. Typically, there's more rebounds available because the rest of them aren't the best scorers, but the game sometimes does move at a bit of a quicker pace. I don't know. It can kind of go a few different ways when Jaylen Brown is out, but I have exposure to Alperen Sengun. He's going to be a leverage play for me tonight. I always mention it. Boston's a little small with Kita out there, but they're still a really good rebounding team. But good, aggressive bigs can take advantage of a matchup here, and Sengun's one of the best in the business these days. So I have a 15% min on him. He's going to be a leverage play. I like being double the field here. I even had to boost his projection a little bit to get him to show up a bit more for me, because the DS really doesn't like him, which could be a sign, could be wrong here, but I love the low ownership with someone like him who has a lot of upside. KD has been good recently. Not my favorite spot, but I have a 5% min on him just to have some exposure, but he's another guy I feel like you don't have to have on this slate. Not the best game. That's why you're seeing low ownership, but like I said, there's enough there that kind of caught my attention. All right. Next up, we have the Pelicans, who are surprisingly one of the healthier teams on the slate. Not something we've seen a lot this year. No injury news here. Everyone's healthy, which really deprioritizes them. The interesting thing, though, is Zion's been playing more consistent minutes. It's not a tough matchup for him, so I just put a 10% min there, trying to match the field. Trey Murphy, the third, is getting 20% ownership, which we know he has that upside. We just haven't seen it recently. And I keep saying it. There's just other game environments I like a bit more. And so I don't have a min on Trey Murphy. Let's see if the DS likes him enough to have him show up. Yeah, he shows up in about 3% of lineups, but it's not going to be enough if he goes off tonight. I don't like him enough to force exposure there either. All right, and then Saddiq Bey, he's been our guy for a while. I do think there's better options on this slate than him, but just in case he has another crazy night, I have a 5% min there. Similar story of Derek Queen. I do believe we have better value and just guys who are almost guaranteed to see more minutes, whereas Derek Queen's minutes have been all over the place. I still have a 5% min there just in case, again, he's the one who kind of goes crazy on this slate because we do know he has that kind of upside. So just a way of getting different with guys that most people are just kind of really looking over. Jose Alvarado is going to be a pass for me. All right. The Bucks have been doing a lot this last few days. Bobby Portis is out, and so that's going to be a boost to guys like Kyle Kuzma, even Gary Trent Jr. a little bit, and really just usage rates across the board. We saw it yesterday when we got that news, and we saw guys like Pete Nance and Kyle Kuzma really pop off. I don't really remember what Miles Turner did. I think he was just okay. But doesn't matter. We know the Pelicans front court is hot garbage. They're in the paint. They can't do anything defensively. And we've been playing bigs against this team for a long time. Not going to stop that now, even though we have value at center. I have a 15% min on Miles Turner. He's shown he can take advantage of good matchups. Hopefully he's aggressive there without Giannis. Once again, 15% min on Kyle Kuzma, going right back to him. Had 40% of him last night. Once again, don't really know how things didn't go well last night. But willing to go back here. Never the guy I trust the most, which is why he's not a core play or anything like that for me. But this is still another good spot. I'm not afraid to play him. Ryan Rollins, I wish he was cheaper. Kevin Porter Jr. is returning tonight. So that's one thing that lowers the excitement on Ryan Rollins a bit in this soft matchup. But Rollins should still play a ton of minutes, have a good usage rate. And so he's no longer someone I want in every single lineup. Like I kind of thought I wouldn't like him that much earlier. But he's still someone I want to see show up a bit. So that's why I have a 15% min there. So I like the Bucks, but I'm just not going, too crazy on them. All right. Can't even drink water. What is my life today? Next up, we have, let's see. Jason said, I have a crazy feeling about a couple of players tonight. Ryan Rollins and Ty Jerome. Those are good players to have a feeling about. Hope you're right with Ryan Rollins, at least. We'll see about Ty Jerome. We'll get there soon. Next up, we have the Thunder going up against the Spurs. This was a game I felt really good earlier today, just completely ignoring, because those are two good defenses. Why the hell do I care about this game? And then it all fell apart. It all fell apart when OKC basically just threw in all their starters not playing tonight. SGA is out. Chet Holmgren out. Isaiah Hartenstein out. Crushed last night. Lou Dort out. Alex Caruso out. Dieng out. And then the rest of the guys have been out for a while. This team only has 8 players available. Similar situation to the Jazz last night. I love the Jazz. I said it yesterday. The Jazz are a team I like to see on a slate. I cannot say the same thing about OKC. I hate seeing them on a slate. Their guys are guys that pissed me off for years, but they are so cheap and they will all see a ton of minutes. Someone here will burn us, just like yesterday there was a Jazz player who burned us. I don't remember who it was, but there's always one or two who will completely suck. But the spot's too good for me to fade, and it's too good for me to not have exposure to. Brandon Carlson, 3,500 player. We have him projected for 28 minutes. The projected starting lineup for the Thunder is Cason Wallace at the 1, Isaiah Joe at the 2. That's definitely going to happen. Aaron Wiggins at the 3, Kenrich Williams at 4, and Jalen Williams at 5. And then Brooks, Youngblood, and Carlson should all come off the bench. But again, they don't have anyone else really coming off the bench. And so these bench players are very, very viable. So don't freak out if you don't see them start. Brandon Carlson at 3,500 is showing up in 73% of lineups. I might lock him. Let me look at the sim model again right quick. 3,500. I think it had him graded out as really the best value play on the slate. Yep. And so that's just a situation I'm not going to overthink too much. It could be wrong. Things like that happen all the time. I'm just going to lock him in just so that's one spot that's going to be consistent in every single lineup, increasing the odds of me winning just a little bit because he is still going to be super chalky. And then what else did I change? I have a 60% min on Aaron Wiggins, just making sure he shows up a lot. Have a 60% min on Jalen Williams with a Y. Similar situation, only 5K. Matchup is tough. And so I do worry about that some. Because we're not really getting an extreme discount here. But the 30 plus minutes, we don't usually see that from him. He is the guy on this team who has the highest point per minute rate. So potential that he could just be one of the more aggressive guys here. And so I have a 60% min there. Cason Wallace and I go way back. Have some biases towards him. Someone I will never put him in on again. But he is... Oh, crap. Did I jinx myself into now having to put him in on him? He was showing up in about 30% of my lineups, and now he's only showing up in 3. Sometimes you gotta wait until you talk a little bit. I will put a 30% min on Cason Wallace, but he is my least favorite Thunder on this slate. But again, pretty much guaranteed minutes. He's the guy who we have projected to see the most minutes. If you're attacking the Spurs, I do prefer guards. And so 30% min on Cason Wallace is fine with me here. Let's make sure Kenrich Williams is showing up. Another guy I usually don't love, but without him in and just some of the other changes I have on this slate, he's no longer showing up for me. And he's another guy I want to make sure I have exposure to. Again, like yesterday with the Jazz, I want exposure to all of these guys, but Kenrich Williams and Cason Wallace are like the two I trust the least. So I will at least, let's see, 50. Should I do 55? 55. Yeah, we'll do 55. That's where his ownership is. It looks like Isaiah Joe isn't popping for me anymore. Isaiah Joe used to be my small slate guy. I used to always get a little bit of him. But I'll put a 50% min there, and then Brandon Carlson's a lock. I have a 25% min on Chris Youngblood and a 5% min on Brooks Barnhizer. Just one exposure to them. Again, just given their price tag and the increase in minutes that they're going to have at this price tag. Haven't shown a lot of upside. Not the best point per minute guys either. But given their lack of options here, just want to make sure I have a little bit. I have a 25% min on Chris Youngblood. He's one guy I really just want to see show up more. But is there a huge difference between Youngblood and Barnhizer? Price-wise, no, but the points per minute boost is what kind of made me want to force a little bit more exposure to him than Barnhizer. So I am playing a ton of the Thunder tonight, and I'm not going to overthink it. Yeah, it is. Like, it's literally deja vu from yesterday, where with these guys who just usually rarely play, the points per minute just doesn't matter as much because they don't get a lot of time, and they're usually going in at the end of the game where they're told, like, hey, just hold the ball, don't shoot, like, just kill time. And so their points per minute will be bad unless they see a little bit more run, typically. Thank God, E-Money. We did not need Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle out on this slate. It's just not needed. Not needed. And you're seeing the DS is only running 149 lineups for me right now. That's because I made a lot of changes, and so it's struggling. I can hand build one lineup. That will be fine. All right. For the Spurs, this is an interesting spot because for San Antonio, they have Stephon Castle listed as questionable. If he gets ruled out, Vassell should move into the starting lineup. He becomes a very viable small forward on this slate. Can go back and forth. There's other value options who have more guaranteed minutes, but he's someone who would be interesting for me. And then Dylan Harper is questionable, and that's just going to be a boost to some of the other guards on this slate. The reason I like this spot maybe a bit more than other people is that on paper, this Thunder matchup looks terrible, but we've talked about it. All the starters are gone for this team. So this is actually an extremely soft matchup. And so I want to make sure I'm over the field on Victor Wembanyama. That 15% ownership in a matchup against scrubs is insane to me. The big concern here is the blowout risk, but the spread's not that wide, which is a little weird. But I like being over the field to Victor Wembanyama, even given that risk, because ownership's just a bit too low for me. De'Aaron Fox, I just want exposure to. Castle, if he plays, I like having exposure to. I have a 10% min on him, but if he gets ruled out, I have plenty of options, value options, and just guys in that same price range in these last 3 games that I'm not stuck. I have a ton of other very viable guys I can swap to. And then that's pretty much it for me with the Spurs. Gonna double check and make sure I'm not missing anybody here. Yeah, Castle, Fox. No one else is really standing out for me too much there. So yeah, I like these guys significantly more than most. And then next up, we have the Memphis Grizzlies going up against the Kings. Weird game because Sacramento's, they have Sabonis questionable. So if he doesn't play, we'll see right now to start, which could make things a little bit grosser. I am a little surprised that the spread is so close though, because Memphis has a ton of guys out. Santi Aldama's questionable. That's the news of the slate. If Aldama gets ruled out, that's going to be a big boost to Gregory Jackson, GG Jackson. And Prosper would see a small boost as well, but at his price tag, more viable. Kings are not a defense we worry about, so this is a good spot for this team. Kyle Anderson is out with a trade. Walter Clayton is out with a trade. Scottie Pippen is doubtful. Thank God he's not coming back. That would have made this a lot grosser. Taylor Hendricks is out with the trade. And so this team, and then John Morant, all those guys, Edie, they've been out for a hot minute. So this team is in a really good spot, and they have a great matchup against the Kings. Not quite as good as OKC because they do have more guys that they can have shorter rotations with, but it's still a really good spot, a good matchup for them. And so my approach with Memphis tonight is to make Cedric Howard a priority. I really like him at 5,200. He fits into a lot of lineups very, very well. And then the Aldama news is frustrating. I have a 20% min on him. Again, smash spot if he plays. He should play a ton of minutes here. But it's hard to go too crazy on him right now just because we don't know if he's going to play. Hopefully the Q tag keeps his ownership low and I have way more than everybody else, but hard to get too excited about that, not knowing what's going to happen there. Mentioned Cedric Howard's my favorite play here. Ty Jerome's not bad. It's just we have so many good guards once again on this slate, and I'm trying to keep it narrow. I have no issue with a 5% min on Ty Jerome, getting double the field on him. Even 10% is fine. He just didn't stand out enough for me with some of the other guards I like a lot more on this slate. And then we have GG Jackson, who's in a fine spot. Even if Aldama doesn't play, I really like this matchup for him. I have a 10% min, just trying to make sure I get exposure. But if Aldama gets ruled out as balls to the wall, I'm going to have a ton of GG Jackson exposure. So one of those wait and see moments. And then outside of that, not really getting to some of the cheapies here, just because their minutes floor isn't comparable to the OKC guys. Could someone pop off? Maybe like a Jalen Wells, maybe. We've seen it before, but he's also priced up too, so not a super exciting spot for me. But this game also does have the highest total, and so that's part of why I'm forcing exposure to a lot of these guys and why I like seeing them show up in lineups. So never gonna like crap on a Cam Spencer or Ty Jerome play, even if I am not doing anything to make sure they show up for me. For Sacramento, again, I mentioned the Sabonis news. Reynaud would start in the situation. He has a soft matchup where if Sabonis gets ruled out, I would like to have a little bit of Maxime Reynaud exposure. But as of right now, absolutely none of these guys pop too much for me besides DeAndre Hunter. DeAndre Hunter was traded and now he's playing for the Kings. I'm curious to see how they use him. He should see a ton of minutes. And in a soft matchup, I'm not, overly concerned about how he'll play. He should also have a higher usage rate. Like he doesn't have a Donovan Mitchell or a Garland or a Mobley or an Allen. these guys aren't really comparable to them at all. So they should try to utilize him and involve him a bit more. He will pop for you naturally in the DS. He's showing up in about 5% of my lineups. I think earlier I was saying 15 to 20%. I'm comfortable having 5, 10%. I'm contemplating if I should try and put a min on him to get him to show up a little bit more. But I'm just going to ride with it. 5% Hunter is enough for me. I don't have to go too crazy there because, again, he's 4,800. Good value play on a smaller slate. He would be someone I like a lot more, but we have a lot of these 3K guys who are going to play 30 minutes. So he's just another one of them that, to me, has a little bit more upside. So he's someone I want to make sure I have at least some exposure to. All right, last but not least, we have the Cavs going up against the Clippers. Another game that I thought was going to be completely boring and I wouldn't want any exposure to. But given the news we've gotten, I am intrigued. For the Cavs, a lot of this news has been out, like Evan Mobley's out. James Harden was traded yesterday, so he's definitely not playing here. Lonzo Ball, gone. That's really the main pieces of news here. But what makes this team more interesting to me is the other side of this game. We just got the news that Ivica Zubac is out, the starting center for the Clippers. And that means Brook Lopez is going to be starting. And Brook Lopez is not known for his defense, which for me just makes this matchup that's tough on paper much better. So I like having Donovan Mitchell exposure. I have a 25% min on him. I don't love it. I kind of just like having some exposure to him for the narrative in my head of, hey, you have James Harden now. He's joining your team. You kind of want to go out there and show him like, hey, we're here to be serious. We're gonna deal with your old team. You'll see how good we are. Keep the morale high with him on the team. And that's just a crazy narrative that's in my head. This is not a great matchup for him in general, but he's chalky. I'll have a 25% min on him. Let's see, does he actually show up around 25%? Yeah, he shows up right at 26%. So, I'm comfortable with it, but it's not something I'm going too wild with. Jared Allen's going to be a leverage play for me tonight. Ownership is insane. Should be significantly higher. I keep checking pretty much all the other websites to make sure Jared Allen's ownership is not increasing. I said it. Zubac, their starting center, is out. Super soft matchup. Evan Mobley is out for the Cavs. Jared Allen has been significantly better and more involved offensively when Evan Mobley's out. So for me, this is a smash spot, and his ownership is staying low. The problem is that we have this other value. We have the Brandon Carlsons and the Brook Lopez's starting to show up. So there are other bigs you can play, but Jared Allen's one of my favorite ones who I just want to make sure is showing up a lot for me. I increased his projection a bit to try and make that happen. He's still not showing up a ton. Don't love that. I am willing to put a 40-point projection on him, which is a bit wild. I'm going to have to increase Şengün's too to 50 just to get these guys to show up as much as I want them to. All right, other side of this game for the Clippers, no James Harden, no Zubac, which really just leaves Kawhi Leonard. And we've talked about it a lot this season. This is not a tough matchup anymore. They play at a fast pace. And so I want Kawhi Leonard in a lot of lineups in situations like this. So I have a 40% min on him, just really betting on this being a close competitive game. It's one of the closer spreads we have on the slate. And so I like making sure I have some exposure there. And then we've seen John Collins see a bit of a boost with Brook Lopez out, or with Zubac out. And we know John Collins can't be trusted. He's not Mr. Consistency, but he does have some upside at his $5,600 price tag. And no James Harden. There's enough here where I'm willing to bet on the faster pace benefiting him. And so 10% min there. Brook Lopez, I have a 20% min on. He benefits a lot with Zubac out. his minutes floor increases. He becomes one of the better value center options we have on this slate. And then we have Yannick Konen, who's similar to like the Pete Nance play from yesterday. A guy who is just randomly thrown into seeing more minutes. We have him projected for about 23, but he's a decent points per minute guy. So we'll see what he actually does. Not someone that I'm trying to get too much of, but I have a 5% min on just trying to add him into the mix of these value options. So I like it. I like it. This is a fun slate to me. It's weird. There's a lot of low-owned guys. There's a ton of just spots that look really tough and difficult that aren't because there's injury news. And so it's just one of those where, kind of like yesterday, where there's a lot of flexibility and possibilities in how you make lineups. And I don't feel too restricted in just looking at like a couple spots. Yeah, Jesus hates him. You can take it as a sign if you may, but sometimes it's just hard to construct lineups with certain players because of their position eligibility and things of that sort. And I like to kind of push the limits. For me, sometimes I'll take it as a sign of like, hey, I'm getting too cute. Other times it's like, hey, you're just making some really different lineups, and it's hard for the system to fully understand that. So, there's definitely a lot of risk involved there. Let's see what exposures actually look like. We have that lock on Brandon Carlson. Yesterday, I talked myself out of awesome locks, and I can do that easily. I'm not doing that here, so I'm going to keep that. Cedric Coward and Jalen Williams are showing up a ton. Aldama is showing up so much in 65% of lineups. I'm okay with that because we've talked about all of the really good options. But, let's just look at his price range. Like Aldama, where is he? He is, how much is he? 6,100. So if he gets ruled out and I have 65% exposure to him, and let's filter it this way. So we only have these games. Center, power forward, and utility. Cam Spencer would still be viable if he's in the util spot. Cedric Coward, but he's in almost all my lineups. Hunter, it would. Well, if Aldama's out, really it's just Gigi Jackson as the easy switch and pivot. Unless he's in that center spot, then it's a bit tighter. Sabonis, if he's out and you have Aldama in the center section, that's a Reynaud spot to me that I would like, but that also depends on another player, so that gets a little weird. But we have flexibility. And then we also have Hunter at the power forward spot. I wonder where he's showing up primarily. I doubt with me having Carlson as a lock, he's showing up. Yeah, he's actually only showing up as a power forward for me. So, yeah, I'll have a ton of flexibility to get exposure to different guys, even if we get that news pretty late. So, it's scary having that much exposure to a guy like that who's questionable, but the spot's good enough where if he plays, I'm very comfortable having that much exposure, and he'll be lower owned because he has a Q tag. So, I'm not going to overthink that spot too much. Even if he plays, will he be limited? Aldama's been in and out of the lineup pretty consistently. Memphis, they don't have a ton of guys of experience. He usually does still see like 28 to 30 plus minutes in a competitive game, even if he was out for a little bit. It's weird how there's some guys who are just, they almost always have a Q tag, and so you just don't worry about the minutes too much, but that is a risk. All right, Kawhi showing up in 47% of lineups, my top stud on the slate. Then we have Cason Wallace showing up in 30. Aaron Wiggins isn't showing up in 60% of lineups. Looks like I'll be a little under the field on him. I'll have to live with that. Can't play everybody. Boosted Jared Allen. He's now showing up in 36% of lineups. So I'll play around with it a little bit to try and just get him a little bit closer to 20%. I don't hate the 36, but it's only because I increased his projection. He wasn't showing up before at all with that. So I know it's more of a me thing and less of a DS suddenly likes him now type of thing. And then Anthony Edwards, I have a 15% min on, but he's showing up in 31% of lineups. What that says to me is that the DS doesn't really know what studs to put in there, and it's having trouble getting guys like Victor Wembanyama in there because I have Carlson locked. And so I regretted this yesterday. Hope I don't regret it today. I'll take the lock off. Carlson should show up by himself a lot. He was earlier. I'll do a 40% min there just to kind of solidify that in the DS and make sure I get what I want here. And yeah, y'all can definitely start to pack out. I'm just kind of showing you small changes I make as I run and just see how it goes until I get what I like. And then I just run with it and call it a day. All right, yeah. Carlson still shows up in 44% of lineups. 39-point projection has Jared Allen now right at 20%. Şengün right at 15%. Love it. Only guy I'm still missing is Wemby. Oh, no. Wemby's showing up right at 20%. So this is good. All the studs are now showing up where I want them to be, which is ideal. I did lose some of that Anthony Edwards exposure, but that 30% was too high for me. He could definitely, like I said, positive game environment, should be close, all that stuff. But 15% is more ideal for where I would like him to be. Yeah. That's it. Like, the DS loves the Thunder guys, which I do too. It's just I'm always trying to figure out what can I do different than what everyone else is doing. And so I have to try and get some exposure to these lower owned guys just so, I don't know, easiest way I've found to take down tournaments for me. And then, yeah, DS is doing its thing. Has all the guys showing up that I want. Sabonis, I have that 5% min on, but he's not showing up at all. But I don't care enough about Sabonis to change anything. There's nothing like doing a ton of stuff to the DS and then suddenly it all lines up. My top 5 highest exposures are all the OKC guys. I'm fine with that. I'm liking what I'm seeing. No longer under the field on Aaron Wiggins too, which is nice. So this is just a much more balanced way of playing it. I'm going to rock with this and call it a day. So that's pretty much it, y'all. Helmets up tonight. Make sure you post it in the Discord if you take some stuff down. And beat-ups tomorrow is Thursday? Yeah, so Madness will be on tomorrow with me, so it won't be solo. And then beat-ups will be here on Friday. So rest of the week will be awesome. Hopefully starting tonight, we'll have a great slate. But, oh, I missed this. Brandon said, choose one, Mitchell or Leonard for util. It's going to be Leonard for me, but it's close. Jason likes Mitchell. Like, hard to go wrong for me in that situation. All right. Peace out, y'all. See you tomorrow. Good luck.